2024's Longlegs. Does it suck? Let's find out. When I first heard about this movie, I was really excited. Nicolas Cage as a serial killer in a horror movie, sign me up. I was there. Then I watched it, then I hated it, then a lot of people loved it, and I didn't understand why. The movie felt like it was a product plucked from much better films, slapped into one ginormous mess with a gimmick. The gimmick being a crazy Nick Cage, which he's already batshit crazy in general, so it wasn't really a stretch for him. There were moments where I was watching the movie and I was like, he probably doesn't even know he's being filmed. This is just how he acts in his spare time. So kids receive a doll for their birthday, and then the father of the family goes nuts and kills them and then himself. And this is a recurring theme, and it looks like murder-suicide. But nobody questions the dolls very far in this storyline. Like, I understand there's not a whole lot of evidence to tie the doll maker to the family, but it seems like if there was a creepy doll at each one, it would be something to look into. Especially when you have Buffalo Joker, the doll maker, going downtown. We know he goes into stores and stuff, so it just felt like a huge overlook that nobody's suspecting this guy whatsoever. Next thing, the whole storyline with the detective's mother, living with Longlegs after she made a deal with him to work for him in order to not kill her daughter. This situation that she finds herself living in, where Longlegs lives in their basement for like over a decade, and she just goes and does whatever he says to protect her daughter. This situation seems harder to stay in than to leave. Like, she struck up a deal with someone who was holding her hostage, who was threatening her family. I understand you say what you need to say. But when he lets you go, which he does, he gives you complete freedom, you hold up your end of the bargain. Like, I'm going to be true to my word on this one, because I got a good feeling about this guy. What? Anyone who follows Nicolas Cage's career knows that he takes just about any movie role to keep the IRS off his back. So when he went into this, he only had like a 2-week filming schedule. And my thoughts going into it were, this is probably going to be a movie where he's not really in it. And I was correct. There are a few bits and pieces of him, a few small scenes. There's one scene where he goes to the store, and then there's another one where they do a Batman-style interview, and then bam, he's dead. And that's all the Cage you get. I seen things where it said that he was inspired by his mother, I believe, in the way that he portrayed the performance, which I can respect. He is a good actor, but I just feel like he's trying way too hard to be the Joker, and he's delivering scenes like he's trying to be more deep, but it's just kind of like the Kamala Harris speeches where it's like saying a lot, but you're saying nothing.
Oz Perkins directed Longlegs. His career is, he hasn't been directing that long, only less than 10 years, but he's already showing incredible promise with other films like Gretel and Hansel, and he directed a few others that were, kind of went under the radar. And then here comes Longlegs, which is, I'd have to say, is his most ambitious, because he was utilizing elements outside of the film to tell the story. For instance, there was a full ARG as part of the marketing of this film. You can go to a website after you sort of watch the trailers and can decipher the sort of hidden coding that is here and there. And even the titles of the videos play into it, sort of adding to the lore of Longlegs. And you go to this website and you can read through it, and then there's some videos, and in those videos it sort of depicts Longlegs as, you don't really hear him speak, you just see him kind of, I don't know, somehow I think the character was scarier in this sort of analog horror form. And reading about the character was also like really interesting too. Well, and then when I saw the movie, I saw it in theater, and honestly I was glad I did, because I didn't want to have the face reveal spoiled, and unfortunately it's all over the internet, so you probably have seen what his face looks like now. And it was really special because the trailers kept it very tight. No one had really gotten a good shot or a good look at him, and part of the actual plot of the film is that it does leverage, you getting a good clear look. And there is a sequence in the movie towards the end where you finally just get a pan shot and getting a good look at him for the first time. Almost like it's sort of, here you go. Not quite the way you expected it. I do agree with Cody that there are times you could argue that Osgood sort of, leverages the Nick Cage performance a little too often, I think, honestly. But I also feel like that's a testament to the strength of the character. That a lot of the problem is that you don't really get enough of him on screen. But I don't think that hurts the film. I think it's actually one of the strengths of the film. I think because we're dealing with a oddly placed demonic plot line. I mean, it adds a lot. It definitely adds a lot. But we spend a lot of time investigating. We spend a lot of time with the main character, and she's interesting. And I think I personally thought because rewatching it too, it made me try to notice, well, what does this mean? Why is there such an eerie emotion in this sequence? So you kind of feel the sort of a looming presence in every scene. In fact, I'd even say every shot in the film feels, oddly haunted in a way. And it's not really just Longlegs, but the friend of a friend, man downstairs.
I do agree with Jake that Lee Harker was a good character. I did like her. Most of my problems stem from the overall plot. When it comes to the promotion of this movie, I think they did a great job. I remember there was like a phone number you could call and you could talk to Longlegs, and that was really creepy. That part I respect. That was good. That was like going back to like Blair Witch style things, cranking it up and getting your interest in there right away. When I watch movies, one of the big factors is how rewatchable is it. And when I left the theater after seeing this, I never wanted to see it again. When it comes to the films that this movie drew inspiration from, such as Silence of the Lambs and Seven, you can look at those movies and the villains in those films are something else. You have John Doe and Hannibal Lecter. And after watching both of them, those are characters that I wanted to learn more about because they were kind of like monsters in society. But when I seen Longlegs, the way that he acted and the way that Nicolas Cage portrayed him, like, he came off as somebody who could never function day to day. He seems like every person that he bumps into is going to call the police on him. He, even in the 90s, he is absolute stranger danger. He seems like a pedophile. He's very, very spooky, just walking. So I don't believe that, you could have a character like that and have a realistic outview like, oh yeah, he just slips through the cracks. I think he would be locked up every weekend. He's just not believable to me that he can go outside. And then like he's out trespassing in people's yards. He's bothering people at stores. Again, to mention like Hannibal Lecter, he has that intelligence and charm, and he like a high class killer. And Longlegs is the opposite. And then you tie in all the stuff with like the devil, and he's working for the devil, but like, why is he working for the devil? Why is he making dolls? That stuff just bothers me because when you look deeper into the big picture, it's just like, how did this start? But I also don't care to learn how this started.
Feels like it's hinting at a larger narrative taking place. Usually, it's kind of like those that eerie feeling you get when you watch The Shining, and you start to kind of get this notion, well, it's more than a haunted hotel. It's more along the lines of this place might be like a living thing almost, and that it hints to something Lovecraftian, if you will. And that's actually what I feel about Longlegs. I feel a great sense of Lovecraftian horror. Like what's happening is beyond the character's comprehension. It's even beyond Longlegs' comprehension. I think the story in that regard is it's unusually deep, and I would agree with Cody that there's definitely some plot holes, and there's definitely some, like, there's things that can, sometimes bend your suspension of disbelief, and I think that's on purpose, but you look at the character of Longlegs, and this is just as cartoonish a person as you can imagine. You know what I mean? And on purpose too. You get the sense this character is always just kind of looking for approval, always trying to be funny. If I could compare the character to any other character in horror history, it would probably be Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, played by the great Bill Moseley. It's that uncomfortable energy where he's not really like being, at first he's not really being threatening. He's not trying to be threatening. He's just talking to you, but he's so off-putting. There's something like seriously wrong with him that you're just immediately unhinged by it or unsettled by it. And I get that same kind of unnerving energy from Longlegs. There's theories that he was a failed rock star. The reason his face looks like that is because plastic surgery and there's hints of that backstory scattered throughout the film. And I wouldn't be against that, you know what I mean? Just, I could see sort of, I like the idea that it's shown that a person that he was insane before the events of the film, you know what I mean? The character was, and Nick Cage, he made an interesting point that the character was inspired by his mother, and I think Longlegs also has a bit of Norman Bates to him in that regard, or at least Ed Gein. Which a lot of movie killers were based on. But I get the same vibe here, almost like, Longlegs just has this very feminine, very, you don't even know what gender he is. He's a Longlegs. That's what it is. Those are his pronouns, long and legs. And something about this makes him feel, because he doesn't even know what he is anymore. You know what I'm saying? That's the idea you get, that he's just so out of his mind, so deranged, that he doesn't even really view himself as a person or a human being anymore. Like, there's that really creepy line just before he bashes his face into the table where he says, "Oh, I'll be a little bit of everywhere." That right there, to me, sort of solidifies, like, the deeper themes of, this sort of demonic storyline. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like, because he's a devil worshiper, so Satan is definitely, or some entity related to what you would consider the devil is, present here.
I haven't heard the Rockstar theory before, but I kind of like it. It kind of makes sense with the whole rock and roll, sell your soul thing. That is kind of cool. And I do remember seeing a picture of Lou Reed in his room, if I'm not mistaken. And I guess that kind of adds up with his glammy, freaky, flamboyant style. So I do kind of like that. I don't know if it's a real thing or just something that people say, but that could be cool. I guess that leads into another problem I have, though, is when I go see a movie, I kind of want to know what's going on. Like, you don't have to spoon feed it, but I shouldn't have to go dig and do research and then, like, run with fan theories about what your movie is to have it make sense. Your job as a filmmaker is to present a full circle picture. That's kind of what you do. And, like, yeah, you can be abstract about things. You don't have to give away everything. But I think you do need to give enough that we can just watch the movie and know what's going on. The thing that bugs me the most is it feels like a property without a true identity. Like, it's trying to be Silence of the Lambs, it's trying to be Seven, it's trying to be the Zodiac. It even feels like they're taking from, like, Sinister with the supernatural and the twist ending. And it just doesn't work for me because it doesn't feel like a fleshed out property. Nothing is fully laid out for you. It's just kind of like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, switch this, confuse them with this. We're going to add this, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just go with it.
I didn't really have any expectations going in, because I've trained myself to not have expectations going in. But I did get excited following the ARG that was present in the trailers, and the trailers are actually definitely, like, they're really good. Those are really, those trailers are the reason this movie made $100 million. If you think it's a bad movie, I wouldn't blame you. I think you could definitely argue that this film is just not for everybody, and Nick Cage definitely cranks it up to 10 or to 11. I mean, and it can be funny. You know, it really is funny. Like sometimes when he's just saying, "Let me," I think it was I think it'll age well. I think over time, it's one of those movies that you really just have to kind of. It's just like The Shining in a lot of ways. I keep bringing up The Shining because the film really reminds me of it, as far as the type of filmmaking, very Kubrick-y. And that movie wasn't even well received back in the day because no one really knew what to make of it. And granted, it aged very well because I think, you know, it definitely had an audience that appreciated it back in the day. But eventually, it went on to become one of the most popular horror films of all time. I feel like Longlegs is a movie I'll keep coming back to because there's still so much mystery to it. Still so much I feel like I can take from it. I think Nick Cage's performance is all in once one of the craziest he's ever done, but at the same time one of the best he's ever done as far as like he's really going all the way with it. You feel like he's using his full whatever he's capable of to bring the character to life, and that's probably, it's really his performance that, you know, makes the character work. And honestly, I felt like even though you do get very few instances of just seeing how sort of, you know, ridiculous he is, I feel like it's the scenes that, you know, that build up to that. You know, you see him, you get to look at him, that makes the character feel more scary. When you're actually interacting with him, it's almost like I don't know. It's almost like you don't know what to make of him. You know what I mean? Like it's something, but he's unnerving for that reason. You can't get a beat on the guy. I'd say that Longlegs is a really, really good horror film. But at the same time, I also am still kind of festering on it because I think it has the potential to be a great movie. Like, I think there's a great movie there, but I feel like it is kind of obscured under its own layers. There's just so much to take in, you know, there's just so much happening in this movie. You know, the demonic elements, serial killer, you know, procedural, and I can agree with Corey that it seems like there is a whole lot of ideas happening, and, you know, that are very familiar from other movies, but at times you could argue that it takes away from each other. Maybe the film would have been a lot more straightforward had it just kind of, you know, focused more on the Longlegs character and the detective character and the procedural aspect than it did on the supernatural aspect. And I think you definitely walk a tightrope when you're having to kind of literally balance those two, because in this film it works as a, you know, again, just a Silence of the Lambs type of hunting down the serial killer, but it also works in the sense that it's a supernatural demonic horror film as well. But that doesn't mean that they work together all the time. There's definitely various moments in this movie where it feels like they're in perfect harmony. But I definitely could agree that there is a sort of a imbalance in the tone. But anyways, yeah, that's about how I feel about Longlegs. I think it's, you know, in the really good class. But it might be a great movie after my second or third watching. I don't know. We'll see.